There are places on Earth that seem to belong somewhere else. Not because they're hidden, not because they're impossible to reach, but because, for a moment, your eyes simply don't know what they're looking at. A desert where ancient trees still stand beneath towering dunes. A salt plain where the horizon disappears and the ground becomes a mirror. A beach made almost entirely of black volcanic rock. White terraces that look carved into a mountainside. And enormous stone pillars rising through the clouds like the ruins of another world. They sound fictional. They look computer-generated. But every one of them is real. And the stranger you make these landscapes look, the more fascinating their real stories become. So let's count down 5 places on Earth that look fake, but aren't.
At first glance, Deadvlei looks less like a real landscape and more like a scene someone designed for a fantasy film. The ground is pale and almost completely barren. Around it rise some of the tallest dunes in the world, glowing deep orange beneath the desert sun. And standing between them are trees that appear to have died yesterday. They haven't. Some of these camel thorn trees have been standing here for roughly 1,000 years. The strange part is that the trees didn't simply die and disappear. They were left behind. Long ago, water from the Zhangjiajie River reached this area, creating enough moisture for vegetation to grow. But the landscape changed. The river stopped reaching this basin, while the surrounding dunes gradually cut the area off from its water supply. The trees died. And then something even stranger happened. Because the desert is so dry, their remains have decomposed extremely slowly. So instead of disappearing into the ground, the dark skeletons of the trees remained standing against the bright desert. There's almost no movement here. No forest, no river. Just sand, clay, and trees that have outlived the landscape that once supported them. And that silence makes the place feel even less real.
If Deadvlei looks like another planet, Salar de Uyuni looks like Earth has temporarily forgotten where the ground ends. This is the world's largest salt flat, and when a thin layer of rainwater covers its surface, something extraordinary happens. The landscape turns into a mirror. The sky reflects beneath your feet. Clouds seem to continue below the horizon, and for a few moments, there's almost no visual boundary between above and below. It's one of those places where scale becomes difficult to understand. A person standing in the middle can look almost microscopic. A vehicle crossing the surface can appear to float through an endless sky. But the effect isn't magic, it's geometry. The salt flat formed from ancient lakes that repeatedly evaporated, leaving enormous quantities of salt and minerals behind. Over immense periods of time, those deposits accumulated across this vast, remarkably flat landscape. During the rainy season, water can spread across parts of the surface in a layer shallow enough to remain incredibly smooth. And that smooth water reflects the sky. That's all it takes. A few centimeters of water, and an enormous salt desert suddenly becomes a mirror stretching toward infinity. Sometimes the most surreal landscapes don't need anything unusual added to them. They just need the right conditions.
Then the landscape changes completely. The white disappears, the colors become darker, and the ocean suddenly feels much closer. This is Reynisfjara, on Iceland's southern coast. A beach covered in black volcanic sand, surrounded by cliffs and enormous basalt formations. The first thing you notice is the contrast. Dark sand beneath a grey sky, black columns rising from the cliffside, and beyond them, the Atlantic Ocean constantly throwing itself against the shore. Those strange geometric columns weren't built by humans. They're the result of volcanic rock cooling and contracting. As molten rock slowly cooled, it fractured into remarkably regular shapes. Over time, erosion exposed those structures, creating the enormous walls of basalt seen here today. Offshore, strange sea stacks rise from the water. According to Icelandic folklore, they're said to be trolls turned to stone by sunlight. The geology, of course, is less mysterious, but somehow, the real explanation is just as impressive. This entire coastline is a reminder that Iceland is still shaped by the forces that created it. Fire from beneath the ground, ice, wind, and an ocean powerful enough to reshape rock. And here, unlike the silent desert landscapes we've just seen, nature doesn't stay still. You can hear it. Every wave arrives with enough force to remind you that this beautiful place is not gentle.
From black, volcanic rock to a mountainside that looks almost sculpted from snow.
Pamukkale in southwestern Turkey is one of those landscapes that seems impossible until you understand what created it. The terraces are bright white, the pools are turquoise, and the entire hillside appears to be frozen in the middle of a cascade. But these formations weren't carved by an artist, they were built by water. Hot spring water rises from underground, carrying dissolved minerals with it. As the water flows over the surface and cools, some of those minerals are deposited as calcium carbonate, layer by layer, year after year. Over long periods of time, those deposits build the white travertine terraces. And that slow process creates something that looks remarkably solid, from something that is constantly moving. Water flows, minerals settle, the landscape grows. Standing back from it, it's easy to imagine an enormous frozen waterfall. But get closer, and the illusion disappears. You can see the water moving. You can see the texture of the rock. And suddenly the landscape becomes even more interesting. Because what looks like a single spectacular structure is actually the result of countless tiny geological processes happening over time.
And then, there is Zhangjiajie. The first thing you see isn't the landscape, it's the mist. It hides almost everything. A single mountain appears, then another, until the clouds begin to separate and reveal hundreds of towering sandstone pillars rising vertically from the forest. Some seem impossibly thin. Others rise hundreds of meters above the valleys. From a distance, they look like enormous stone towers floating in the clouds. But these mountains weren't created in a single dramatic event. Their story is much slower. For millions of years, natural forces have been wearing away the surrounding rock. Rainwater enters cracks. Weathering weakens the stone. Erosion removes material from the landscape. And gradually, the harder sections remain standing, while the surrounding rock disappears. The result is this extraordinary collection of vertical pillars. A landscape shaped not by one moment, but by an almost unimaginable amount of time. And if the scenery looks familiar, there is a reason. The dramatic sandstone formations of Zhangjiajie are often associated with the visual inspiration for the floating mountains seen in James Cameron's Avatar. The real mountains, of course, don't float. They don't need to. When clouds move through their valleys, the illusion is already there. For a few seconds, the mountains disappear. Then the mist opens, and suddenly, an entire world appears beneath you. That's what makes this place such a fitting final stop. Because after seeing dead trees preserved by a desert, a salt flat transformed into a mirror, volcanic cliffs shaped by fire and ocean, thermal terraces built by mineral-rich water, and mountains carved by erosion, the pattern becomes clear. Earth doesn't need to imitate fantasy. Reality has been doing stranger things for far longer. After seeing places like these, it's tempting to think of them as exceptions. Strange corners of the planet that somehow escaped reality. But maybe that's the wrong way to look at them. Because every landscape we just saw was created by ordinary forces.
water, wind, volcanic activity, minerals, erosion, time. Nothing supernatural, nothing fictional. Just nature given enough time to do something extraordinary. And perhaps that's the strangest thing about Earth. The planet doesn't have to invent another world. It already has countless worlds of its own. So, if you could visit just one of these places, which one would you choose? Deadvlei? The endless mirror of Uyuni? The dark coast of Iceland? Pamukkale? Or the mountains of Zhangjiajie? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoy discovering the places on Earth that seem too strange to be real, stay with us for the next journey, because there are still plenty of places out there that look impossible. And somehow, they're all real.